Story 1. Staying together when they hate each other. The tension is unbearable. Story 2. Restricting access to sex education or sexual health and hygiene classes and information delays learning unnecessarily. Early, repeated, age-appropriate, and evolving discussions as children grow should be the norm. It is not just the talk. It is multiple talks, discussions, answering questions, and allowing children the freedom to ask. Consider the abuse prevented when a child understands what is happening instead of being manipulated and harmed by ignorance. Consider the reductions in teenage pregnancies, low birth weight premature babies, and sexually transmitted infection rates in young people and adults. More women have careers to support themselves and their children when they delay having children. There are fewer accidental pregnancies and abortions. Fewer divorces occur when people do not marry unhappily, too early, or for the wrong reasons due to unplanned pregnancies. All of this begins with sex education and children knowing what sex, safe sex, consent, good sexual hygiene and health, reproduction, and how to prevent or encourage a healthy, wanted pregnancy and good relationships are. Story 3. Making children feel like they have to be perfect instead of simply being loved. Story 4. Never disciplining them at all. Never saying no. I am not talking about abuse or spanking. I am talking about not even saying, punching another child is wrong. Story 5. Being overly protective and not allowing children to experience hardships in life. Story 6. Hovering too much prevents children from learning important life lessons independently. I believe it is beneficial to allow children to face and overcome challenges on their own. Story 7. Homeschooling children who are lazy and undisciplined can be challenging. I homeschooled for a decade and observed the damage caused by lazy, uneducated parents. Yes, this also happens in public schools, but at least the teacher cares. Story 8. This may be a bit controversial, but attempting to completely shield children from the internet is equivalent to abstinence-only sex education. There is nothing a predator loves more than someone who does not know how the internet works, and there is nothing a cult loves more than someone in a perpetual state of fear and uncertainty. Story 9. Taking away children's privacy or not allowing them to have privacy in the first place. Story 10. Not seeking mental health support for them, hoping they will grow out of it. Story 11. Restricting who their children can be friends with based on gender or making assumptions based on their friendships is inappropriate. No, your son playing with a girl or your daughter playing with a boy does not automatically imply anything other than they simply want to be friends and spend time together, especially at a young age. As for assumptions, if your child has an opposite-gender friendship and you or any other adult supports a romantic notion about them, that is your responsibility, not theirs. This behavior is inappropriate when the two friends are children. Story 12. Not allowing the child to make age-appropriate decisions for themselves. Story 13. Encourage children to pursue a profession that is beneficial for them. Story 14. Forcing people to remain completely silent while the children are sleeping, ensuring perfect silence every time. My parents continued their activities normally while I would sleep. I used to sleep on chairs at family parties and gatherings, and now I can fall asleep anywhere. Story 15. Sheltering. Some parents think that they will protect their child from the dangers of the world by making sure they never cause any issues or do not hang out with anyone because their friend might be a bad influence. Ultimately, they either raise someone who stays isolated forever or at least cause many more struggles with social and love life for their child. Story 16. When I was young and in middle or high school, I had a recurring bully who effectively kept me away from many activities because my parents' guiding rule was, never engage. If they try to fight you, run away and find help immediately. Do not fight back, or you will be grounded as if you started it. This kind of rule led me to believe that I was not capable of handling things myself, and even if I did handle them, I would be punished by my parents. I do not think promoting fighting to children is the right way to resolve issues. However, telling them to shy away, rely on others to fix problems, or repress their ability to be independent hinders their growth and creates more anxious individuals who struggle to deal with their own issues. Story 17. Trying to restrict their child and refusing to engage in conversations that make them uncomfortable is ineffective. If the child, especially teenagers, wants to do something, they will find a way to do it. Would you rather have open conversations with your child about boundaries and concerns or let them get hurt by doing it in secret? If they are curious about something, they will find information about it. Would you rather that information come from you or a source you do not know or trust? Talk to your kids. Be responsible adults. Do not treat them as second-class citizens, property, or under authoritarian control. If you cannot do that, you should reconsider having children. Story 18. Fixing everything in their children's lives instead of allowing them to deal with challenges themselves prevents them from learning how to handle negative situations and grow as individuals. This approach often results in entitled and spoiled people who cannot accept being told no or that their actions are wrong. It can also lead to individuals who struggle with basic human interactions without someone there to support them. Many people are raised believing that everything they do or think is correct and others are wrong, so they cannot handle being corrected. Story 19. Being overprotective. Sometimes you need to let your children make mistakes. They need to learn how to be independent. If they need help, they will let you know. Story 20. Physical discipline. Numerous scientific studies show that physical discipline causes more harm than good. Many parents use it because it was used on them, and they are unwilling to find better methods. Story 21. Letting them win at everything and rewarding every small goal as if they had won the Super Bowl after the age of 3. Story 22. The one I hear about the most is physical violence of any kind. Many people say, "Of course my parents smacked me many times and I do the same thing. It's totally normal. Look at me, I'm fine." No, it is not normal. Even if you turned out to be completely fine, which is very unlikely, you do not know how your child will be affected by this kind of behavior. Story 23. Forcing kids to choose a career at 17 is unfair. I still do not even know my Starbucks order. Story 24. Jumping in to defend their child at every minor disappointment or slight, instead of allowing them to learn to handle adversity as a part of life. Story 25. Withholding compliments and positive reinforcement, and not expressing pride in your child, especially when they fail, can lead to deep psychological issues. Many people just wanted a hug when they did not win the 5th grade science fair, but instead, they were berated during the car ride home. These things matter when you want to raise a good human. Story 26. From my own experiences, being overprotective and having higher expectations. I don't know how to list this one, but I also recently found out that kids who skip kindergarten tend to struggle to be social with other students because those kids all bonded in kindergarten, but I just showed up and was the odd one out. I think this habit and sense of self carried on into my adulthood. Overprotectiveness. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or do anything unless my mom knew the phone numbers of all the kids I was going with and their parents' phone numbers. The phone number of the adult chaperone, number 14-year-olds have adult supervision required when going to the mall with 5 other friends. What we were doing, how I was getting there, how I was getting back, etc. Even if she had all of those things, she could still say no because she said so or because my grades weren't up. I struggled all throughout school with doing my homework, which I can now blame on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Even though I was smart, aced tests, and was in honors classes, I usually had A's and B's, but by the end of high school, I had to switch schools because it just became too much. I missed out on a lot of social interactions and events, so I never fully fit in, even within my own friend groups. I missed out on field trips and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. My parents have always had my best interest in mind, but I'm the youngest, also known as the baby of the family. I'm pushing 30, and my mom still introduces me to people as her baby. That's from a personal standpoint, but I don't think my experience is exclusive at all. Story 27. Insisting to children that there is a tooth fairy and Santa Claus, feeding them false information to convince them that it is true, then revealing that all adults are members of a large conspiracy designed to fool them. Then we wonder why people question whether vaccines are helpful or if the earth is round. Story 28. Indoctrinating children into religion raises important questions. What does it say if the only reason a child practices a particular faith is because their parents made them do so? Perhaps it is better to allow children to choose their own beliefs when they are older. Story 29. They choose children's futures instead of carefully watching the child and encouraging what the child seems to like to do. Story 30. The two extremes of permissive parenting, which is loving and warm but lacks sufficient discipline and problem-solving teaching, and authoritarian parenting, which is overly strict with rigid rules and fails to adequately consider the child's perspective. There are recent articles on parenting styles and how to positively impact a child's well-being and mental health. Story 31. Shield their children from things they know the children will do anyway, whether they like it or not, because we did. It is better to teach safety and boundaries around the behavior than to enforce abstinence, as that only makes them wonder what the fuss is about and become more curious. Do not just say, "Because I said so." Children do not learn anything from that. Tell them why they cannot do something so they can understand and apply it to other situations. Do not assume they are not noticing difficult situations because you are not actively talking to them. Children sense stress, overhear conversations more than you realize, and notice if conversations stop when they are around. They are not unaware and worry more. Tell them what you can, as close to the truth as possible in an age-appropriate way without frightening them. Their minds are less likely to wander to extremes, and this explains why adults might not be acting normally. You also need to model the behavior you expect from your children. You cannot scold your children for bullying someone about their weight, for example, if they hear you being judgmental about a celebrity who has gained weight. Children learn from what they experience. Story 32. Keeping children clean without being overly protective is important. Children need to play in natural environments to help build their immune systems. Story 33. Coddling them and doing everything for them. If you do not let them fail and learn from their mistakes, you are setting them up to be failures without your support. Story 34. Zero screen time. We live in a society where all children need basic tablet and computer skills. Even if it is just a few supervised hours at the library as a treat when they are younger, parents who are completely against any screen learning are setting their children up to fall behind later. Yes, large amounts of screen time are very bad, but zero is also a setback. Story 35. Lying to protect them. They often know you are lying and imagine things far scarier than the truth. Some versions of the truth can be simplified and made age-appropriate. Also, if you lie to them, they might doubt your word on truths that matter. Story 36. Certain types of tough love. There have been many comments about coddling and helicopter parents. There is another side to that. When and where I grew up, there was a common mentality that you could justify certain behaviors with, "You are not a kid anymore, and this is how the real world works," in various contexts. What it taught me was that my family were no different than strangers. Even if that is not exactly true, that is what it felt like. Then they wonder why I never came home after I went away for college. We are not estranged, but we are not close. Story 37. Having children but never spending time with them, such as placing them in front of the television or tablet and generally ignoring them. Story 38. Cry it out. A baby cannot learn to self-soothe. Studies have shown that cortisol remains high. Babies do not learn to self-soothe. They learn that no one is coming when they cry at night. Story 39. Telling their child that a college degree is their ticket to an easy life. Because of that mentality, I had to figure out how to socialize and date on my own because my parents believed those were unnecessary. A friend I have known since middle school has been unemployed for the last 5 years because he believed the lie he was fed. He is still sitting at home thinking, "This degree will get me a job any minute now, any minute now." Story 40. Forcing children to finish their plate can lead to lifelong guilt associated with eating broccoli. Story 41. Not talking about money and finances at home. I do not mean in a way that stresses the child out about money, but in a way that teaches them the value of goods and services. My parents refused to talk about money and finances until the day I moved out. I had to figure that out on my own, and it was very stressful. School only does so much to teach you about money management, and usually that does not happen until late middle school or high school. Children should be taught the costs of things like food, bills, and housing in an age-appropriate way so they can grow up with a strong foundation in managing their finances. Story 42. Forcing children to hug or kiss relatives because it is considered polite is something I hated deeply. We were paraded in front of all the aunts and uncles and then had to hug and kiss them both when greeting and saying goodbye. Story 43. being friends with their children instead of acting as the parent to their children. Story 44. Corporal punishment. Multiple studies unanimously agree that it does more harm than good. Story 45. Making excuses for your child is unhelpful. They need to learn that there are consequences for their actions. Story 46. Yelling and making you do things whether you like it or not does not give children the freedom to say no. They grow up feeling pressured in decision-making, believing that saying no will lead to consequences, and they will hold it against you. Story 47. Serving their needs. Obey your mother and father. Story 48. Overshielding children from social situations occurs because some parents avoid placing their children in new experiences that they themselves disliked as children. These parents believe their children must learn to adapt and overcome obstacles, but they often avoid new situations entirely. In fact, most millennial parents of Generation Alpha children try to shape their children's lifestyles based on what they desired or feared when they were younger. However, these parents are often unaware when they have gone too far because they lack experience in that area and cannot clearly perceive what is healthy and what is excessive. Story 49. Letting their children do whatever they want without supervision or discipline because they are very young and do not know any better. Story 50. Being too strict, not letting them go out with their friends. Just stay home all day, every day, even though you do not have any plans that day. Story 51. My sister-in-law spent a lot of time coming up with ideas for her children's rooms. They are cute and quaint. However, now the daughter is 8 and told us in passing, "Thanks for the stickers. I wish I could use them." Apparently, mom is so strict about the kids' rooms that the children cannot put stickers on anything. Story 52. The public library has age-appropriate materials for every age. My son started asking me about babies when he was 5, and I took him to the library. He was satisfied with the explanation for quite a while. Story 53. Make their children the center of everything to the detriment of their marriage. Story 54. Isolation and not letting me do things. I wasn't even allowed to have sleepovers at my friends' houses while their parents were home. All the while, I was attending high school, taking honors and advanced placement courses, and enrolled in community college. My younger brother would have parties at our house with alcohol and who knows what, and I couldn't even stay at a friend's house when I was tired and didn't want to drive at 17. Guess what happened when I went to college? I acted wildly. I didn't graduate college. My brother did and is a millionaire now. We don't talk. Story 55. Forcing children into specific activities or career paths without listening to them because the parents believe they know what is best for them. Story 56. Controlling every aspect of their kids' lives and not allowing them to have responsibilities. Looking at you, mama bear policies. Story 57. Not telling their child a diagnosis such as autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder so as not to other them or make them feel different. They will be othered. They will know they are different. They will just internalize it instead of knowing they are not at fault for their own condition. Story 58. Not giving them any guidance and just letting their children figure everything out by themselves. Then, they get upset when their adult children do not know how to do anything. Story 59. Allowing children to eat whatever they want leads to being overweight during childhood. Story 60. My parents did not fight, at least not in front of the children. Until one day they did. I was halfway through 6th grade when suddenly my parents were screaming and yelling at each other. The children were sent to the basement to play. Mostly, we just stared at the ceiling where the loud voices came from. About a month later, my father moved out and stayed with his mother. At the end of the school year, my mother left and took me and my little sister with her. My older brother stayed with my father. To this day, I have a very hard time expressing myself in a relationship. I still struggle with the concept that a disagreement does not mean the relationship is over. Story 61. Not letting them make decisions. Comparing them to other family members, such as siblings or cousins, as this is who we do not want you to be like. I experienced that a lot growing up. While that family member was not always pleasant to be around, they are not always like that and can be fun to be around. However, They are selective with their energy and do not have the life my parents expect of them. It is exhausting. Story 62. Not explaining the concept of mental illness to their children, especially if it runs in the family. Being told, this is what depression is and it runs in the family, or if you ever feel certain symptoms, we are here to help you, would have helped me so much as a mentally ill child. If you can tell your child that heart conditions run in the family, you can tell them that obsessive-compulsive disorder and eating disorders do too. Story 63. Having children. Seriously, people have children for no other reason than because it is the right thing to do. And that is not the right thing to do. Story 64. Forcing children to stay quiet instead of teaching them how to express emotions properly. Story 65. Discouraging children from questioning and requiring unquestioning obedience to authority. Story 66. Forcing children into careers they do not like may feel safe for parents, but it destroys passion. Story 67. Physical punishment, such as spanking, smacking, or biting back if your child bites, has been extensively researched for decades. The evidence shows that it only harms children, yet people continue to use it and defend it. Some say, I was spanked as a child and turned out fine, so there is nothing wrong with spanking. However, this perspective overlooks the harm caused and the belief that it is acceptable to physically strike a child as punishment. Story 68. Trying to impose their own interests on their children instead of allowing them to discover their own. Additionally, failing to take an interest in what their children are passionate about. Story 69. Shielding their children from everything in childhood only makes adulthood hit like a truck. Story 70. Parents who try to live vicariously through their children. Parents unable to recognize that children are autonomous individuals, not smaller versions of themselves. Anxious parents who do not know how to emotionally regulate themselves in healthy ways and end up trying to control everything their children do to ease their own fears. Any type of parent who refuses to reflect on themselves, address their own traumas, and develop coping skills often harms their children in various unique ways tied to the parent's trauma and the child they are raising. This is very unfortunate. Few parents understand or care about the concept of reparenting in this time. Story 71. Not letting them explore the world around them because it is not safe. Story 72. Restricting access to food or punishing children because they are picky eaters is not appropriate. It is important to encourage children to try new foods repeatedly. However, they should not be forced to sit at the table for hours over a small serving of green beans. Nor should they go hungry because they do not like what adults are eating. Story 73. Sending your children to schools that are highly acclaimed but have little to no diversity is a decision I regret. I chose those schools because their special education programs were excellent, but my children did not make many friends. Story 74. Grounding kids for minor inconveniences is not appropriate. I am not talking about punishable offenses. I am referring to things that do not really affect anyone, hurt anyone, or cause conflicts. I got grounded for having a B in biology for 2 weeks. That is an inconvenient grade. It is not a bad grade and not a punishable offense. I felt terrible for those entire 2 weeks. Also, things like knocking over a cup or walking into a door happen. Being clumsy is unfortunate, but punishment for it is not justified. Story 75. Supporting them differently can be beneficial within reason. However, if a naturally more self-sufficient child receives significantly less support than their less self-sufficient sibling, it can cause real problems and tension later in life. Story 76. Treating them like your best friend. They are your children and you are their parent. Setting boundaries and routines are good for them, even if they complain. Story 77. Disciplining someone until their behavior changes to something more suitable, usually without any explanation or established rules beforehand. If you were my parents, that is. Story 78. Helicoptering. Let them fall. Let them cry. Let them get dirty. Let them fail. Let them succeed alone. Story 79. Not letting children be bored and allowing them to figure things out on their own. Story 80. Kicking their child out of the house on their 18th birthday. Story 81. especially from my mother, pointing out how much you are eating, saying third helping, and do you really need that? Ma'am, I was 14 and had just come home from school with a granola bar in hand. I am still not fully recovered from my eating disorder at 23, and now I am seeing the same pattern with my 14-year-old sister. Story 82. Step in and fight the children's battles for them. Children have to learn how to deal with conflict. It might not be pleasant, but parents cannot be there for their entire lives. Story 83. Exposing individuals to and indoctrinating them into religion is toxic, regardless of the cult. Story 84. Trying to force their children to conform to a specific worldview, way of expressing themselves, or way of living or loving. Forcing a particular religion on them, forcing them to be heterosexual, or forcing them to adopt a particular style of hair, dress, and makeup. Story 85. Circumcision is not necessarily harmful every time, but removing a part of a baby's body without consent that does not need to be removed is concerning. I believe it should always be the choice of the boy himself. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.